Hi, and welcome to A Star Reads. I'm Amy, and if you're interested in nonfiction books, this is the place to be because I have my September nonfiction recommendation video for you today. If you like nonfiction books or you want to try and get more into nonfiction books, click that subscribe button because I have a whole bunch of recommendations for you, and I have some suggestions today that are actually good for people who are more interested in narrative nonfiction, stuff that's not maybe as heavy as some of the other historical nonfiction that you will pick up off the shelf. Today I want to talk to you about one particular writer. I read 2 of his books in the last month and a half, and I want to discuss his writing as well as these 2 books. So I'll be talking about Erik Larson. If you're not familiar with who Erik Larson is, he's a historical nonfiction writer, and he's written, I'd say like 4 or 5 pretty popular, well-known books. And what I think is really unique about him, and one of the things that you should read about when you read the end of either of these 2 books, is that he really discusses how he does his research, which to me, I guess being a nerd, is fascinating. So he doesn't actually like do any research online whatsoever. He goes to different libraries and old collections of different artifacts and papers and stuff, and he just starts reading everything. When he starts reading about a particular part of history, he kind of looks to see where there's a story in there that he can tell. What I love about that is it really feels very mysterious and exciting, like he's on an adventure looking for a story within all these books. What I think is really cool about that, like I said, I'm a nerd, is that he's had the opportunity to hold really old documents in his hand and read words written down by people who've gone through extraordinary experiences. And I don't know if I'd have the patience for that kind of research, but it just seems very exciting to me. Maybe it just sounds more exciting than it actually is, but it sounds pretty cool. So the books I'm going to talk to you about today are Erik Larson's Devil in the White City and Dead Wake. This is the last crossing of the Lusitania. So I'll talk about Devil in the White City first. I listened to it on audiobook, which actually this was my second time ever listening to Devil in the White City, and I loved it on audiobook. I was really impressed. Scott Brick, who was the narrator, did a great job of creating suspense and pacing this book really well. So let me tell you what the book is all about. Devil in the White City is really marketed as a book about H.h. Holmes, who was the first American serial killer. It's a hard word to say, serial killer, and shouldn't be a hard word, I know English. And the book really does involve H.h. Holmes. He talks about his history, when he comes to Chicago, when he starts building his Hotel of Horrors, and some of the main murders that Erik Larson was actually able to find testimony and information on. So, you know, you're obviously not going to be going through everything because H.h. Holmes, one of the things that made him really successful was that he was able to stay under the radar and nobody really knew about him for a very long time. You're experiencing H.h. Holmes' lifeline, including what happens during the World's Fair, which is the part where he was probably the most prolific in his murders. It's probably a horrible word to use for it, but when he had the most success because he was able to keep a lot of anonymity. And Erik Larson, given the really minimal information he was able to pull up on H.h. Holmes, does a great job of trying to get into his mind, trying to understand what a sociopath is, because at the time, scientists didn't really understand the concept of sociopath. So that's what part of the story is about. The other part of the story is actually really heavily on the World's Fair itself. You are meeting the key players of the World's Fair: Daniel Burnham, Frederick Olmsted, and a couple of the other main architects, as well as many of the people that actually went into getting this huge event to come into fruition within 2 years, which was crazy because Paris had done it prior to that, and they took like 10 years to do it or something along those lines. And Daniel Burnham had 2 years, maybe even less than 2 years because of the amount of time it took to get things approved and whatnot. So you're watching this event come together that's supposed to be one of the most incredible that the world has ever seen, with huge buildings that some of the most famous architects of the time were building, as well as complete new landscaping of a whole area of Chicago, and trying to build the infrastructure needed to host hundreds of thousands of people within the period of like 6 months that the fair ran. So it was actually really fascinating to follow the process of the building up of this giant event from both H.h. Holmes' perspective, where you're learning about the things he's doing, as well as key players in the World's Fair and people within the city. Erik Larson really pulled as much information as he possibly could to give you a full picture of the World's Fair. And that's one of the things I love so much about Erik Larson, and I'll discuss it a little more when I talk about Dead Wake as well. But Erik Larson has this ability to take a piece of history and expand on it to a point where you incorporate so many other elements of history that you can place it right in that area of history and know the bigger picture. I feel like I've read a lot of historical nonfiction, and you're learning about an event or a person and you're only seeing what's really happening to them. And history is so broad and so expansive, it's hard to kind of picture what's going on everywhere, what's going on with everything. And granted, he doesn't include everything and everywhere, but he's able to take pieces of history and give you extreme detail, but then build on that. So you're seeing what's happening in the city, in the state, in the country, in the world. And I love that because I really like seeing the broader picture. I really like knowing how his story is incorporated with other stories around the world. And how he does that is he brings in key characters in history and key figures that have nothing to do with the particular event you're talking about or have minimal to do with it. And he kind of shows you what's going on in their life at that point of history. One of the people he talks about extensively is Wild Bill Hickok. And Wild Bill Hickok actually had a really large part of the World's Fair, and you get to see that. I just love how he adds these different famous people from history, different famous events in history to this story so you can see the broader picture. That is one thing about his nonfiction writing that it blows me away. I love it, and yeah, I know that other historians probably do the same thing, but not in the way that he does it. He just impresses me a lot with that, and I can visualize things very well because of how he builds the world and the way things are going on in his books. Devil in the White City I give probably 4.25 stars, which is really highly rated for me. I loved it. Would I like to know more about H.h. Holmes? Sure, but he is a nonfiction writer, so he can only go with what he actually has. Did I think that a couple of sections dragged on a little here and there? Maybe a little. And that's probably why I didn't give it a complete full 5 stars. However, this book is fantastic. Devil in the White City, if you're interested in history, especially World's Fair and serial killer history, I think that this is a great book and I highly recommend it. So the next book I want to talk to you about is Erik Larson's Dead Wake, The Last Crossing of Lusitania. And this actually occurs during World War I. So this takes place like the early summer of 1915 and goes through the end of World War I. The story revolves around the Cunard Line's cruise ship Lusitania. And the Lusitania is sort of known for being the ship that caused the US to go into World War I. And if you don't know your history about World War I, the Lusitania, which was a passenger liner, was bombed by a German submarine. So you start following the story the day before the cruise liner takes off. The main people you'll be hearing from in this were William Turner, who was the captain of the Lusitania. You'll hear from Woodrow Wilson quite a bit because he was the president of the United States. A little bit from the Room 40, which was like this secret intelligence in London. Some of the people that were a big part of that. And then you especially hear a lot about Captain Lieutenant Walter Schweiger, who was the captain of the submarine that actually bombed Lusitania. In the beginning, you learn a lot about the importance of the intelligence that's going on during this time and kind of the rise of the Germans by using submarines in their warfare. In Europe, the trench warfare really kind of hit a standstill at some points. Both the Alliance and the Central Powers were really hoping that they would make some legway on the waters, in the ocean, by battle in the ocean. So during this time, a lot of the German submarines were delicate and they couldn't actually go up against, big battleships or tankers and whatnot. So they actually started bombing commercial liners. Any of the commercial liners, merchant ships, boats that were either British or bringing supplies to England. And they started getting kind of loose about it. Their US was trying to remain neutral as long as possible, but Germany was like, nah, we don't care so much. We'll just start bombing everybody. And it was really starting to be a problem because Woodrow Wilson was trying as hard as he could to stay out of this war, and he was sort of getting pushed into something he didn't want to partake in. So you start following William Turner and you're talking about his history with Cunard as a captain and all his preparations into taking the Lusitania across seas. And not only are you talking about William Turner, but you're learning stories about all the people going on this trip. So you're learning about a famous medium, one of the Vanderbilts, different characters, first class, second class, and some third class that will be on the ship during this voyage. I really like that because Erik sets up the scene for you really well so you know who's on this ship and what's going to happen. You can build up that tension. And then in the US, Woodrow Wilson is going through some first he's going through some strife, and then he goes through a bit of a dalliance. And you start seeing how that kind of is affecting the choices he's making. And that part was a little like, You know, as a president of the United States, you should be a little more focused on some of the things that are going on in the US. And I was a little shocked by his behavior and some of the things he said. And then you're learning a lot about Schweiger and the different captains of these submarines and kind of what's going on in their mind, which I thought was interesting because you're not just getting one perspective, you're getting perspectives within the Allies, but also perspectives in the Central Powers, which I think is fascinating and is a nice way to look at history because everything, especially war, is not just one-sided. There are two sides to every battle, and being able to see where the other side is coming from gives you a better understanding of what happened in the war and why it did. So aside from the world that Erik Larson is able to build, one of the things I really love about his writing style is that despite the fact that history is not changeable, he can't do anything to alter history if he's a good nonfiction writer, he's able to build up suspense to the point where he gets to a climax. And I think that's incredible because, like I said, history can't be changed. You can't decide, oh, you know what, I want to manipulate the story so it comes to this beautiful climax here and then finishes out into a thoughtful finale. And he does that. He takes the stories that he's learning from these real life events and he's able to pattern it in a way that makes for a really good story, makes for a really good narrative. With Devil in the White City, you're building up the suspense until you get to the opening of the fair and the peak of H.h. Holmes' killing spree. And with Dead Wake, you're building up the suspense to this bombing of a cruise ship which has over 1,000 people on it. I love how he can do that with a nonfiction historical setting. I gave Dead Wake a 4-star. I really liked this book a lot. It's probably a little bit more well done than Devil in the White City, only because I think he was able to find more history on the Lusitania and World War I. I think there's just a lot of people who really follow that period of history, a lot of writings and whatnot that were saved for that time, and with Devil in the White City, there is a lot you can find on the World's Fair, not as much as I would like. I'd like to learn more. H.h. Holmes is difficult because a lot of the things he did were very secretive, and at that time there wasn't the same kind of detective work that you would find nowadays. Because of that, I think that Dead Wake was maybe just a little more well-researched. However, subject matter, I like Devil in the White City just a hair more just because the World's Fair and H.h. Holmes are slightly more interesting topics to me than World War I, and specifically more the technical elements of the intelligence and the submarines. I really love the section about the cruise ship and learning about the people on the cruise ship. I was interested in the submarines and the intelligence agencies, just maybe not quite as much as I felt for the other book. Ultimately, these were both fantastic books. If you're looking for a nonfiction writer who does a very good job with his research as well as creates beautiful stories, I highly recommend Erik Larson. I need to read more of his books, and I will at some point soon, hopefully. So that was my September nonfiction recommendation, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have you picked up either of these two books? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below because I'd be curious what you thought and if you kind of feel the same way I do about his writing style. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe right now and click that like button if you enjoyed this. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Stay safe. Bye.